Silver has always had a strange place in history. It's never been as flashy as gold, it doesn't carry the same mystique, and it doesn't get the same headlines. And yet, again and again, silver shows up at moments when the world is changing fast. When currencies are being questioned, when technology is reshaping society, when power is shifting between nations. Right now is one of those moments. The price explosion everyone is talking about didn't just come out of nowhere. It's the latest chapter in a story that's been unfolding for thousands of years. And once you understand what silver has actually been used for historically and why modern economies depend on it more than people realize, the price starts to sound a little less surprising. So let's step back and look at silver properly, not as a trade, not as a headline, but as a material that keeps ending up at the center of economic systems whether people intend it to or not. For most of human history, silver was money. Not symbolically, literally. Ancient civilizations used silver as a unit of account long before paper currency existed. In Mesopotamia, wages were denominated in silver by weight. In ancient Greece and Rome, silver coins formed the backbone of daily commerce. Even the word salary traces back to payment systems tied to metals. Gold was important, but it was often too valuable for everyday use. Silver sat in the middle, valuable enough to store wealth, common enough to circulate. For centuries, global trade ran on silver. This mattered most in China. For hundreds of years, China's economy was effectively anchored to silver. Taxes were paid in silver, large transactions settled in silver, foreign merchants needed silver to access Chinese goods. When Spain mined massive amounts of silver in the Americas in the 1500s, much of it flowed back into China in exchange for silk, porcelain, and tea. Silver wasn't just money, it was stability. And that stability came with a lesson. When society builds its system around a material, control over that material becomes power. China learned this the hard way. In the early 20th century, China was still effectively operating on a silver-based monetary system. Then, in 1934, the United States passed the Silver Purchase Act, forcing the US government to buy large amounts of silver and pushing prices sharply higher. That move pulled silver out of China. Capital fled, prices collapsed internally, deflation set in, and economic activity slowed. The monetary base had shrank. It wasn't that silver failed as money, it was that China didn't control it. By 1935, China had abandoned the silver standard entirely and moved to a paper currency system. But the lesson stuck. If your economy depends on a material you do not control, someone else can weaponize it against you. As the world moved away from metal-backed currencies, silver didn't just disappear, it changed roles. Instead of sitting in vaults, silver started embedding itself into infrastructure. Electrical contacts, medical instruments, photography, telecommunications. Silver happens to be the best electrical conductor of any metal. That single physical property is why it keeps finding its way into everything. For a long time, this didn't matter much for the price. Silver was plentiful, mining expanded, stockpiles accumulated, governments sold their reserves, technology improved the efficiency of it. Silver stayed relatively cheap. That created an assumption. Silver would always be available, that it would always be easy to source, that the price didn't really matter. That assumption is now breaking. Unlike gold, most silver is not mined on purpose. Roughly 3/4 of global silver production comes as a byproduct of mining other metals like copper, lead, and zinc. That means silver supply does not respond cleanly to silver prices. Even if silver becomes more valuable, production doesn't automatically rise unless base metal mining rises too. At the same time, the world has been running structural silver deficits for years. More silver is being consumed than produced. That gap has been filled by drawing down inventories that have been built decades ago. Those inventories are now shrinking. Registered inventories in Western vaults are far lower than they were a few years ago. Shanghai inventories are tight. Leasing rates have spiked at times, which is a sign that the physical metal is becoming harder to source. This is not a shortage you fix by flipping a switch. New mines take years to develop. Environmental restrictions are now stricter. Capital is being more cautious these days, and silver is rarely the primary incentive for a new project. So supply is slow, rigid, and constrained. That matters a lot when demand accelerates. The modern economy is undergoing two transformations at the same time. One is energy. Solar power relies on silver. There is no practical substitute that delivers the same conductivity and durability at scale. Every solar panel uses silver paste in its electrical contacts. As global solar capacity expands, total silver consumption rises even if manufacturers reduce silver per panel. The volume overwhelms the efficiency. Electrical vehicles use more silver than internal combustion cars. Charging infrastructure uses silver. Power grids use silver. This is not some small amount of discretionary demand. Solar panel manufacturers do not stop buying silver because prices rise. They can maybe redesign slowly, if at all, but production lines ultimately have to keep moving. The second transformation is computing. Artificial intelligence, data centers, high-performance chips, and advanced electronics all rely on dense, reliable electrical connections. Silver is used in contacts, bonding, thermal interfaces, and specialized components where failure is simply not an option. As power densities increase, material constraints matter more, not less. Silver is now officially recognized as a critical material by multiple governments because it sits underneath both civilian infrastructure and defense systems. Governments are stockpiling and companies are trying to secure their own long-term supply. Export controls have also tightened. And you've guessed it, the markets have reacted. China's role did not end in the 1930s. Today, China is one of the largest refiners and processors of silver in the world. Even silver mined elsewhere often passes through Chinese refining infrastructure before entering global supply chains. In late 2025, China reclassified silver under dual-use export controls. By reclassifying silver as dual-use, they're saying it can be used for both everyday civilian things and sensitive or strategic uses like advanced energy systems, electronics, and military tech. Once something is labeled as dual-use, it stops being freely exported. This introduces licensing, oversight, and discretion. It gives the government the ability to prioritize domestic use and manage exports strategically. This is the same approach China used with the rare earth elements, and the result was higher prices, supply uncertainty, and years-long efforts by other countries to rebuild their own independent supply chain. Silver is not a rare earth metal. It's more widely used, more embedded, harder to replace, and that makes the implications larger. Silver does not move smoothly. It never has. Because demand is inelastic and supply is rigid, pressure builds quietly. Inventories drain, contracts roll on, and physical premiums continue to rise. Then something changes. Policy decision, a surge in demand, a macro shift. When that happens, prices move violently. This has happened repeatedly throughout silver's history. Long periods of calm followed by rapid repricing. The recent move fits that pattern. It's not a story about speculation alone. It's a story about a metal that the world kept assuming was abundant and discovering that it isn't as flexible as people thought. Silver keeps reappearing at moments of transition. It sits between money and industry, between finance and physics. That's why it's misunderstood. People try to treat it as just another commodity or just another precious metal. It's neither. It's infrastructure, and infrastructure will always be necessary. Silver matters when systems are stable. It matters more when systems are stressed. And it matters the most when the world is rebuilding itself around new foundations. Energy, computing, supply chains, geopolitics, all of those run through silver now. The recent price jump isn't random, it's the market responding to constraints that took years to form. History doesn't repeat exactly, but with silver it rhymes more often than people expect. And every time it does, it reminds us why this quiet metal never really goes away.